I want to stay on this story for a reaction to this latest discovery. Our Chase team has reached Bob Chamberlain in North Vancouver. He's former vice president of the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs. And Bob, welcome to the program. I want to know what went through your mind when you heard more than 160 undocumented and unmarked graves found, just adding to the numbers.
Well, my first thought was for the survivors of Indian residential schools, and certainly the families of these children that are in our unmarked graves, because even though it is in Penelakut or Kuper Island, this school was populated from children from villages in and around the South Island. So this has a far-reaching impact, and it hurts so much to keep hearing about how these are being uncovered. And I'm really hoping Canadians' consciousness is awake to what experience First Nations have had since the beginning of this country.
Do you have any further information as to how this discovery was in fact uncovered, as you say? Was it ground penetrating radar? What's the story behind it? Because there are some unanswered questions.
Well, I believe that is the mechanism that was used to identify the unmarked graves. This is something that is going to be occurring all across Canada. I've spoken to a number of First Nation leaders who have had residential schools in their communities, and they're preparing to do the very same thing. And so what we're going to find is we're going to have a very large number of unmarked children's graves across this country, which are going to speak very loudly about the path that this country set out to destroy children, family, culture, language, traditions, and remove us from our lands, which everyone is enjoying today except First Nations.
We don't know. We don't have confirmation. You know, I'm a journalist. I want to get the facts out right. We don't know they are all children's graves, right?
Well, there, of course, there's every possibility that they are not all unmarked graves of children. Mm-hmm. But with this emerging story for media today and the realization that this is a reality across this country, I believe it's safe to assume that what we're uncovering now are a very large number of unmarked children's graves at Indian residential schools.
You mentioned that there will be other tribes and communities that will be using ground penetrating radar, that perhaps you're steeling yourself. I don't know if you're trying to build a wall around your heart to try to protect what could be more discoveries that are as grim, as emotional. How are you protecting your heart?
Well, I'm not. I'm allowing myself to feel and to be supportive of the residential school survivors. And certainly that term survivors takes on a whole new realm today. But I know that First Nations people are very strong, very resilient. We're still here, we're practicing our culture, and it is that strength of our ancestors that is continuing in all of our communities to be able to face the days that come and more discoveries that will occur.
Now, Bob, your mother was a residential school survivor, and every time I speak with somebody who's going to psychoanalyze situations, they say it's a generational issue that doesn't go away with one generation. So how do you handle your own family and what your mom had to go through?
Well, I know the stories. My mom explained to me what happened to her, and it was just nothing short of atrocious. And it's troubling. But myself, like many other First Nations people in society, seek wellness in terms of recovery or treatment programs and what have you. And those types of services are very critical. But you've touched on something that's really important when I think back to when the TRC report came out about the Aboriginal Healing Fund and the limited time and resources that were provided. Because when events such as this happen, the uncovering of more unmarked graves, people are triggered, and that triggering causes some very serious emotions to emerge. And so we need to be able to embrace that issues such as this are ongoing, and it needs to be reflected in the services provided to First Nations people as this is going to continue.
Final question for you. Your message to Canadians, as we hear, those of us who are not First Nations, Inuit, Métis, who are perhaps trying to take in the depth of this story and the emotion that you are going through. For example, compassion, I suppose that's the word I'm looking for. We're trying to empathize. What is your message to Canada?
My message to Canada and the citizens of this country is to continue the process you are under now to realize what this country was built upon. And the fact that these schools were not schools, they were a means to destroy a people to free up the land. I encourage every Canadian to ensure that this does not fall by the wayside, that the consciousness that is emerging across this country leads to some substantive changes. Like I believe, after every election, we see new federal departments emerge. Why don't we have one that's going to be wholly committed to implementing the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People from the 90s, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women? Somewhere that present-day negotiators can report obstinance from negotiators from the federal government that want to live in 30-year-old law. I mean, these are the impediments for justice today.
I want to thank you for your time, Bob, and I wish you strength.
You bet. I want to introduce someone.
Sure.
This is my niece, Cora. Say hi.
Hello, Cora. It's Suhanna in Toronto. How are you?
Good.
Excellent.
I think it's important for Canadians to understand what we're speaking about here. Cora is 6, and this is the age of the children that would be taken from our families and put into these residential schools. And this is something that our country needs to come to terms with and to be able to be the country that we portray ourselves to be. And I urge all Canadians to educate yourself on the plight of First Nations people and to understand the residential school was but one piece. And the other pieces of colonization are well and active. And we see that in Prime Minister Trudeau's characterization of this as some dark chapter in our history. It's not. He's misleading you willingly.
All right, Bob, I'm going to leave it there. I want to thank you, and I want to thank your niece, Cora. I appreciate your time, and again, I wish you strength. That is Bob Chamberlain in North Vancouver, former Vice President of the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs. Now, support is available for anyone feeling the effects of these residential school stories. A national Indian residential school crisis line has been set up. It's to provide support for former students and also for others. And if you wish to, you can access emotional and crisis referral services by calling this number. It's on your screen right now. It's a 24-hour national crisis line, 1-866-925-4419.